like you. Be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe in strength. Now I'm the only one.
Welcome back to Diorpop Purple Heart. Tonight, we're diving into one of those quiet, heart-melting moments that ARMY can never get enough of. They were all given their own rooms, private spaces, comfortable beds, a chance to finally rest after exhausting schedules. Everything was perfectly arranged. And yet, somehow, they all ended up in one room. Not just any room, but Seokjin's. What started as a simple visit slowly turned into a full gathering, filled with laughter, soft conversations, and the kind of warmth you can't fake. And in the middle of it all, Jimin and Jungkook, sitting a little too close, sharing glances that spoke louder than words. Tonight we're talking about that night. The room, the quiet intimacy, and the undeniable comfort between them. They were all given their own rooms. Management had arranged everything perfectly. Each member had a private space to rest, to recharge, to finally breathe after a long day of schedules, rehearsals, interviews, and the constant weight of being global icons. The rooms were comfortable, spacious, quiet, exactly what anyone would need after such exhausting days. And yet, somehow, that's never how it ends with them. Because no matter how many separate rooms they're given, no matter how big the hotel suite is, one by one, footsteps always seem to lead to the same place, the room of Jin. There's something about Seokjin's room that feels different. Maybe it's because he's the oldest. Maybe it's the warmth in his personality. Or maybe it's because, in his quiet, steady way, he has always been a safe space for the others. His room doesn't stay silent for long. It becomes a gathering place, a small world where they can just be themselves. That night was no different. At first, it was just one member stopping by. Then another. Someone claimed they were just borrowing something. Someone else said they were just checking in. But soon enough, laughter filled the room, bags were tossed aside, and Seokjin's bed was no longer just his. And in the middle of that easy chaos, two figures naturally gravitated toward each other, like they always do, Jimin and Jungkook. They didn't make a scene. They didn't need to. They simply sat close. Closer than coincidence, but too natural to be questioned. Jimin, soft and expressive as always, laughed freely at something someone said. Jungkook, who had been talking moments earlier, turned instinctively toward Jimin the second he heard that laugh, his smile changing ever so slightly. There are moments you can't script. Moments that don't need explanations. In the warm glow of the bedside lamp, Jimin leaned back casually, one arm resting behind him. Jungkook shifted on the floor near the bed, leaning against the mattress. At some point, Jimin slid down to sit beside him. Their shoulders touched. No one reacted. Because with them, this kind of closeness has always felt normal. Seokjin glanced at them from above, shaking his head with a fond smile. He might jokingly complain about losing control of his own room, but deep down, there's comfort in seeing all of them together like this. After everything they've endured since debuting as part of BTS, these simple, unguarded nights matter more than luxury ever could. As the night went on, the noise softened. Conversations became quieter. Some members stretched out across the bed. Others sat on the floor, backs against the wall. The main lights were turned off, leaving only a dim lamp glowing softly. And in that gentle silence, Jimin and Jungkook seemed to drift into their own quiet bubble. Jungkook teased him about something small, maybe a habit, maybe a reaction earlier in the day. Jimin responded with exaggerated annoyance, lightly nudging him. But his smile never faded. And neither did Jungkook's gaze. It lingered. There's something unmistakable about the way Jungkook looks at Jimin when he thinks no one is paying attention. It's softer, quieter, as if the noise of the room fades for just a second. Jimin, expressive as ever, doesn't hide his affection either. He leans in when he's tired. He rests his chin near Jungkook's shoulder. He speaks in a tone that drops slightly lower, more intimate, more private, even when others are around. They don't need grand gestures. Their closeness is built in small things, knees brushing under dim light, shoulders pressed together without shifting away, hands resting near each other just a little too long. At some point, a few members began leaving for their own rooms. One by one, the laughter faded down the hallway. Seokjin stretched and joked that he was finally reclaiming his space. But Jimin and Jungkook didn't move immediately. They stayed seated on the floor, side by side. Talking in softer voices now. Sharing stories about the day. About how tired they were. About random thoughts that only make sense at midnight. Jungkook listened carefully whenever Jimin spoke. Truly listened. And when Jungkook talked, Jimin's eyes never wandered. In a world where cameras are always watching, where every gesture can be analyzed, these unfiltered moments are rare. But they're also the most honest. There's a different kind of intimacy when no one is performing. When Jimin finally stood up, he extended his hand toward Jungkook without hesitation. Jungkook took it just as naturally. Their eyes met briefly, something quiet passing between them. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Just understood. And maybe that's what makes their bond feel so powerful. It isn't loud. It isn't forced. It's comfortable. Even though they each had their own room waiting for them, perfectly made beds, quiet spaces, privacy, they chose to spend their time together instead. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because after years of growing up side by side, sharing dorms, stages, fears, and dreams, distance feels unfamiliar. That night, Seokjin's room wasn't just a hotel room. It was a reminder of where they started. Of cramped dorms and shared laughter. Of finding comfort in each other when the world felt overwhelming. And in that small, softly lit space, Jimin and Jungkook once again showed something that doesn't need headlines or explanations. Just two people sitting close. Two hearts that have learned each other's rhythms over time. Two souls who, even when given separate rooms, somehow always find their way back to the same place. And maybe that's the most beautiful part of all. And maybe that's what makes moments like this stay with us long after the night ends. It wasn't a stage performance. It wasn't a scripted interview. There were no flashing cameras or dramatic spotlights. Just a quiet hotel room, soft laughter in the background, and two people who have grown up side by side choosing, once again, to sit close. They were given separate rooms, separate spaces, separate beds, separate silence. But comfort isn't always found in being alone. Sometimes, it's found in the familiar warmth of someone who understands you without explanation. In Seokjin's room that night, nothing extraordinary happened. And yet, everything felt meaningful. The soft glances. The shoulders brushing. The way they stayed just a little longer than necessary. Because real closeness doesn't need grand gestures. It lives in the small things. The quiet things. The moments no one forces, but everyone feels. And that's why nights like this matter. Because even with the whole world watching them, even with success bigger than they ever imagined, they still find their way back to each other. Back to shared laughter. Back to simple comfort. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most beautiful story of all.